Someone finally decides to speak. Someone finally refuses to stay silent. And one emotional conversation could change everything. Because after a terrifying ordeal that has left her shaken, vulnerable, and emotionally shattered, Charity Dingle is about to make a decision that could alter multiple lives forever. But here's the problem. Telling the truth doesn't always bring peace. Sometimes it creates new fears, new dangers, new questions. And as Charity prepares to relive one of the most traumatic moments of her life, another familiar face arrives at exactly the right moment. A face many soap fans will instantly recognize. And that unexpected arrival is already creating major discussion. Because while viewers are focused on Charity's heartbreaking battle for justice, a Coronation Street legend has quietly stepped into the middle of one of Emmerdale's darkest stories. And the timing couldn't be more significant. The real mystery begins with Charity. Because ever since her horrifying encounter with Dr. Todd, nothing has felt normal. The confidence she once carried has been replaced by uncertainty. The strength she normally projects has been replaced by fear. And beneath the surface lies something even more painful. The emotional burden many victims carry long after the initial trauma has ended. Questions, doubts, second-guessing. The desperate need to understand what happened. And perhaps most painfully of all, the fear of whether anyone will truly believe her. It's a devastating reality. One that countless viewers will immediately understand. Because trauma doesn't simply disappear. It lingers. It follows. It changes the way people see themselves and the world around them. And that's exactly where Charity finds herself. Trapped between fear and courage. Between silence and action. Between protecting herself emotionally and fighting for justice. But that's only the beginning. Because reporting what happened may be the hardest step of all. Many people imagine that justice starts the moment a victim speaks out. The reality is often far more complicated. Far more emotional. Far more frightening. And that's where tonight's scenes become incredibly powerful. Because Charity reaches a point where she realizes she can no longer carry this burden alone. She can no longer pretend everything is fine. She can no longer allow fear to dictate what happens next. Instead, she makes a choice. A brave choice. A difficult choice. A choice that requires enormous courage. She goes to the police. And suddenly everything changes. But one detail makes the situation even more intriguing. The person waiting to guide her through this process isn't just another police officer. For longtime soap fans, she's a very familiar face indeed. Angela Lonsdale. A performer many viewers still remember from Coronation Street. A face linked to years of soap history. And now she's appearing at the center of this emotionally charged Emmerdale storyline. For some viewers, her arrival may feel nostalgic. For others, it may feel unexpected. But regardless of how fans react, her character enters the story at a crucial moment. Because Charity desperately needs somebody she can trust. Somebody willing to listen. Somebody willing to help her navigate what comes next. And that's where DS Reed enters the picture. However, another problem is already emerging. Because speaking to police means revisiting painful memories. It means turning private pain into public testimony. It means describing experiences many people would rather forget forever. Imagine sitting in that interview room. Imagine being asked to revisit the worst moments. Imagine trying to stay composed while explaining events that changed everything. It's emotionally exhausting. It's psychologically draining. And it's often one of the most difficult parts of seeking justice. What happens next leaves viewers deeply invested. DS Reed approaches Charity with care. With sensitivity. With patience. The questions aren't designed to intimidate. They're designed to understand. To build a picture. To uncover the truth. And for Charity, that creates a rare moment of emotional relief. Because for the first time since the ordeal, somebody is listening. Really listening. Not judging. Not doubting. Not dismissing. Listening. And that seemingly simple act becomes incredibly powerful. Because trauma can make people feel isolated. Invisible. Alone. The opportunity to finally speak can be transformative. Yet even as Charity begins opening up, another mystery starts to form. What happens next? Will Dr. Todd face consequences? Will evidence support Charity's account? Will justice actually be achieved? Or is this only the start of a much longer battle? The uncertainty is impossible to ignore. And that's exactly what keeps the tension so high. Because while Charity's courage is inspiring, courage doesn't guarantee an easy outcome. In fact, it often marks the beginning of a completely different struggle. Then things become even more complicated, because viewers are also finding themselves distracted by another fascinating detail: the arrival of Angela Lonsdale herself. Soap fans have long memories, and many immediately recognized her. Not as DS Reed, but as someone they've seen before. Someone connected to another iconic soap world. Someone whose television journey stretches back decades. Suddenly, discussions begin appearing everywhere. Fans comparing roles, remembering storylines, revisiting memories, and asking a simple question: could this appearance become something more permanent? It's a question worth asking, because Angela's connection to soap drama runs deep. She's appeared in multiple long-running shows, played vastly different characters, adapted to different worlds, different audiences, different storylines. And throughout that journey, she's built a reputation for handling emotionally demanding material, which makes her involvement in Charity's storyline feel particularly fitting. But that's not the most interesting revelation. Because years ago, Angela openly admitted something that now feels strangely relevant. She never ruled out joining Emmerdale. In fact, she seemed genuinely interested in the possibility. At the time, it was simply a passing comment, a brief observation, nothing more. Now suddenly she's here. Not as a resident, not as a regular, but undeniably part of the story. And that's where speculation begins. Because soap fans love theories. And theories thrive on possibility. Could DS Reed become important later? Could this guest appearance evolve into something bigger? Could Angela's return to the soap world be only the beginning? Nobody knows. And uncertainty creates curiosity, which only adds another layer to an already emotional storyline. Meanwhile, Charity continues facing the challenge directly in front of her. Because regardless of who appears around her, this remains her story. Her trauma. Her fight. Her search for justice. And every answer she gives comes with emotional consequences. Every memory revisited carries pain. Every detail shared requires courage. The interview room may seem ordinary, but for Charity it represents something much bigger. A crossroads. A defining moment. A chance to reclaim control. And yet there remains a terrifying possibility. What if speaking out isn't enough? What if the process becomes longer than expected? What if justice proves difficult to secure? These are fears many victims understand all too well. Which is why the storyline feels so emotionally powerful. Because the outcome remains uncertain. The future remains unclear. And viewers become emotionally invested precisely because they don't know what happens next. As the interview continues, one thing becomes impossible to ignore. Charity is no longer hiding. No longer retreating. No longer allowing fear to make decisions for her. And that's an important transformation. A significant shift. One that could ultimately define the entire storyline moving forward. But if one thing is becoming clear, the darkest chapter may not be over yet. Because reporting a crime is one thing. Living through everything that follows is something else entirely. Questions still remain unanswered. Consequences have yet to arrive. And somewhere beyond that interview room, the future remains uncertain. For Charity. For Dr. Todd. And for everyone connected to this devastating story. The truth is finally being spoken. But what happens when that truth starts changing lives? Because if justice is coming, it may arrive with consequences nobody is prepared for. And when the next revelation finally emerges, this story could become even more explosive than anyone imagined. The silence has been broken. The process has begun. But the most dangerous chapter may still be ahead.